Take a breath and settle in. Welcome to Metaphysics at the Movies, the podcast where film meets deeper meaning and every scene becomes a doorway to insight. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing someone who doesn't just watch movies, he reads them. Reverend Rich P. is a Unity minister, speaker, and teacher of practical spirituality, known for blending real-life wisdom with metaphysical truth in a way that's grounded, accessible, and powerful. Around here, it's not just about what's happening on the screen. It's about what's happening within us as we watch. So whether it's drama, comedy, or action, Reverend Rich P. helps us uncover the spiritual principles, the hidden patterns, and the deeper messages woven into the stories we love. Get ready to see movies differently, and maybe even see yourself differently too. Let's get into it.
There's something powerful about watching someone wake up to who they really are, not who fear told them they were, not what failure has tried to label them, but who they are actually beneath the excuses, the drifting, the procrastination, the pain, and that is what The Forge really is. On the surface, it's a movie about mentorship, discipline, purpose, and faith. But underneath, this is a story about spiritual transformation, about the fire that burns away the false self so that the authentic self can emerge, because every one of us goes through the forge. My name is Reverend Richard Pacheco, and today we're going to be talking about The Forge, again, in the line of the Kendrick brothers. And this one hits home because, again, it shows teenagers. And I've always said that I have a passion for watching teens be transformed from an early age, or at least educated from an early age. For those who've visited my site, or if you haven't visited my site, you can always go to revrichp.com, and you'll see I wrote 6 teen journals based on some of the feelings I went through as a teen that I wish would have been addressed back then and teach me how to be a well-equipped adult. Now, it doesn't mean it was going to take everything away, but it was a starting point. And for me, that's what the movie The Forge is. It is a movie where a young man who comes from a walk of life that kind of mimics a lot of our teens these days and was taught how to become a man in his masculine energy, being sensitive, being well-equipped. And he got a mentor to do that. So we're going to talk more about that. But for many of us, when we watch this movie, we remember in our own lives that there are moments where life gets uncomfortable, when the pressure outside of us increases, when spirit keeps nudging us toward growth while part of us still wants comfort. The Forge is never about punishment. It's about preparation. And somewhere between the heat, the accountability, and the surrender, a new version of you begins to appear. Today, we're talking about the metaphysical lessons hidden inside The Forge and why this movie really about spiritual awakening disguised as a coming-of-age story. So grab your popcorn, your journal, and maybe a coffee if the saints are still awake tonight, and let's get into it. So let's start talking about the metaphysical lessons from The Forge. And for those who haven't seen the movie, like I always say, stop the podcast here. Plenty of spoilers ahead. If you and go watch the movie. Actually, I just watched the movie on Netflix, but it was marked as leaving soon. So I would catch it there. It may also be on Tubi with all the other Kendrick brothers that I was able to find on there. If not, I'm sure it's streaming somewhere, but it is a great movie to watch. And as I say, again, my podcast is meant for everybody. It is a Christian-based movie, but interpret it within your own beliefs, whether it is Jewish or Buddhist, it doesn't matter. The lessons remain the same if you look at it exactly as it is, as lessons. So for those of you who want to move forward with me, let's go. So number 1, for me, the forge represents spiritual refinement. In metaphysics, fire symbolizes purification, transformation, and illumination. The forge is a place where raw materials become useful, strong, focused, and refined. Isaiah spends most of the film spiritually asleep. He reactivates or becomes reactive instead of intentional, floating instead of creating, existing instead of living. And a lot of people stay there. If you remember in the movie, for those who've watched it, Isaiah's going around, he's staying home, he's playing video games, he's not doing what his mother asks, he gets upset when he is an adult pretty much, and he's asked to pay some bills or to help out in the house, and he pushes back on everything to the point where his mother has to give him an ultimatum. You have 30 days, and lays down the law. And he goes out and starts looking for a job. And in between there, he's still messing up, but that's okay. So many of us, even though we may not be in Isaiah's same footprints, we use life in the same way. We get into that position of comfort, and it could be painful comfort, but we stay busy. We begin using distractions. It could be scrolling, or as they call it, doom scrolling. Or it could become watching too much television, or playing too many video games, or watching drama television, as they say, and letting it tell you a vision. You get distracted. Again, same thing. Waiting for motivation, waiting for someone to come along to be motivated. Something that I try to, as a minister, whenever I speak, my talks tend to be more of what action can we take? I can tell you all about the books I read. I could tell you about everything else, but it's about showing you where to find the motivation in yourself, because I can't give it to you. I can share with you, but I can't give it to you. People waiting for confidence. They're waiting for some kind of magical spell to hit them, some magical prayer that makes you confident. Trust me, even to this day, I struggle with this. And finally, waiting for someone to rescue them from becoming themselves. But transformation rarely starts from comfort. It has to start when life applies pressure. I'm sure you've all heard it, that when you apply pressure to coal, it becomes a diamond. The forge isn't anything different than that. The forge isn't there to destroy Isaiah. It is there to reveal him. This is practical spirituality in action. Every challenge in our lives can become a spiritual workshop if we allow it to shape consciousness instead of hardening the heart. For many years, I had to look back at my life, and I used to hang out with people blaming everybody in their lives. Now I look back and go, you know what? Each one of those situations taught me something, and hopefully made me a better person for it. 2, mentorship mirrors the Christ consciousness. So in Unity, we constantly talk about listening to that inner still voice, moving into that higher consciousness, that mind that was in Jesus, as it says in the scriptures. One of the deeper themes in the movie is guidance. The mentors in the forge are not just helping Isaiah get a job or become responsible. They're calling forth a higher identity from within him. That's metaphysically important. The Christ is not merely a historical figure in metaphysical interpretation. The Christ represents the divine pattern already planted within each person. Sometimes we need somebody who can see our greatness before we fully recognize ourselves. You've heard this. I've said it. People have said it to me. If you don't believe in yourself at the moment, then borrow my belief in you. And again, it is not about someone calling you out on your faults and all that. And again, it is a perspective thing. If I tell you, hey, you've told me that this was the issue before, I'm telling you again, maybe this is where we need to focus on, and you take it as a perspective of somebody attacking you, and all this person is lovingly sharing with you that this is where you need to start from. This is where you need to make acknowledgement from. We're not trying to control you. We're not trying to shame you, but to remind you of where you're at. I made a joke one day because my daughter and I were talking about lack consciousness, and I was going through some things. Things weren't working out. I was worried about some things that were going to happen. And she called me out on it exactly as I would someone else. And like I told her, I was proud of her, because it wasn't about her calling me out, but the fact that she learned enough to be able to turn it back around and say, hey, Dad, remember when? And you said, and this is what we need to do. And I've practiced it and I've done it. Those are what it is. So when we talk about good mentorship, when you're being a mentor or someone else is being a mentor to you, A good mentor will tell you you are more powerful than the version of yourself you've settled into. I've said that to many people. You can be the most powerful woman. You can be the most powerful man out there if you just got past X, Y, Z. For me, that was forgiveness. That was gratitude. And that was working on myself. I use the Four Agreements as an example. I love that book. And when I fall into certain times, sometimes I step away from unity, from everything else, and go back to that book and ask myself the 4 questions. Am I speaking impeccably to the people I love, to the people around me, and especially to me? Am I taking things personal? Is there any truth to what I am, or is it just me taking it personal? Am I assuming that the situation, what has been said or whatever is about me? Or is there any truth to it? And then finally, to do my best. And that reminds me. So that's why accountability can feel uncomfortable. It confronts the false identity. And the ego does not does not enjoy eviction notices. And that's pretty much what you're doing. You're in unity. I mean, there are books out there, the ego's the enemy, blah, blah, blah. No, in unity, the one thing I've learned is that the ego is truly just a persona that you have created based on the experiences and the teachings that have been bombarded with. And that's okay. The people around you did the best they could. The people around you did maybe all they knew. But because you collected that information, you internalized that information, you created a persona from which you navigate from. And then when you're challenged, when you're given this small, still voice, when you get to that Christ consciousness, the ego starts thinking it's trying to protect you. And in reality, it's just reacting from a place that was built by other people. And now we're building that fortress within yourself. So let's go ahead and hit number 3 here. Discipline is a spiritual practice. One of the strongest lessons in the movie is that discipline changes identity. It doesn't hype you. It's not inspiration and not motivational quotes posted at 2 a.m. in the morning. It's discipline. Metaphysically, repeated thoughts become beliefs. Repeated beliefs become identity. Identity shapes experience. So every small disciplined action is actually a spiritual declaration. Showing up matters. Keeping your word matters. Finishing things matter. I'm a big thing on commitment. And, when I tell people, I say, I promise, I will make sure that I get it done. Now, of course, circumstances happen. But if it's just excuses I'm reaching for, or just time, or I'm just tired and I said I'm going to do something, but now I don't feel like doing it, I'm going to get it done. That's what makes a man. That's what makes a person, somebody can count on. Now, after I complete that commitment, if that's not something I want to repeat, I will gently let the person know, hey, I finished it, got it done for you, but I won't be able to do this again. Let's try to find you someone who can help you. Or if they don't want to hear it, well, I do apologize, but I know this is where I need to move on to. And again, people often want manifestation without formation. We hear it all the time. There's people all over TikTok, all over social media, all the books written on manifestation, law of attraction. And like I said, most people are like, oh, well, that's not religious. Well, reap what you sow is part of that whole format there. Because manifestation, expression, as we call it in unity, law of attraction, all starts with belief and feeling and all of that. But a lot of people want a manifestation like it's a magical poof, and it's here. As one of, I think it was Alex Tripod, who does a kind of a law of attraction type of show, but she's really, I warn you, if you decide to look her up and listen to her, she's straightforward. I love it. I love people who can come right out of mouth and tell you what, she's experienced and how it's done. But she says that you can't try to manifest $1 million with a mindset of $100. But as you continue your discipline, consciousness expands through constant alignment or consistent alignment. So when you keep going back to the studies, you keep re-looking at your beliefs, when you keep expanding what you believe, when you're gentle with your ego and say, hey, thank you for trying to help me. But I realize now that that was something someone told me and it's not working for me. And I'm no longer going to hide in the conformity of pain and lack and not being able to do anything when there's so much ahead of me. If I do this one thing, it may be uncomfortable, but I'm going to get through it. So the movie quietly teaches that purpose is not found through endless thinking. Purpose emerges through the committed action, or as I like to say, faith in action, seeing the thing already done before it's actually happened and taking the action toward it. So even though I haven't gotten to the end, I'm going to say that's your homework this week. At least part of it is to start looking at those things that you haven't completed, things you said you were going to do, and get it complete. Move in faith in action. And it could be scary. Trust me. I love, one of my mentors used to always say that we, especially men, we tend to walk like James Bond on the outside, like, yeah, I got this. So yeah, don't worry about it. And then inside, we're like a big bowl of jelly going, oh my God, how the hell am I going to do this? Blah, 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 blah. And these are what you want to get past. But that's faith in action, knowing what's already done, knowing that you're already in the space of potentiality and moving toward it with action. And again, the failure that may happen may not be failure, but actually course correction, saying, hey, you're running head on this, but hey, we got to take a left here, and start down this narrow road. All right, let's move on to number 4 here. Work becomes sacred when consciousness changes. I've experienced this one firsthand. A beautiful spiritual thread in the forge is the shift is how work is viewed. At first, work is seen as obligation. Later, it becomes stewardship. Then changes everything. Metaphysics teaches that consciousness is the true creator of expression. Two people can do the same task while living in completely different spiritual realities. On one hand, you may look at your job or your business as a burden, and someone else may look at it as a contribution. One sees one as punishment, and another person may see it as their purpose. The outer action may look identical, but the inner consciousness transforms the experience. I know when I was doing some network marketing, I used to sit there, and this is where I fall into that whole return to being a child, where they used to be like, oh, having a job is just over broke, blah, 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 this and that. You need to leave it. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I sat there and thought to myself, I said, well, that never worked for me, because I look at those people who became police officers who genuinely wanted to protect and serve. Those that are firefighters who really just wanted to help and protect communities and help people who are in need and danger. What about the doctors and nurses who just wanted to be there, love helping people? What about the teachers who may not be getting paid as much as they're worth, but yet they're there every day making sure the kids are educated, having fun, learning, growing, even in spite of challenges they may be having, but because the job is from the place of the heart? Why would I tell that person is just over broke? I will tell you a line someone once told me, and I got it, and it made me realize that when you do certain things over what you really love to do, is that sometimes your job, even though it may be something you truly love to do and help people with, may not be good for the pocket, but it's good for the heart. So think about that. When you look at your job, is this something I want to do? And if not, could you find somewhere where you want to do, even if the pay is not there? And then maybe you can do certain things on the side as well. The outer action may look identical. So everybody's working, but not everyone sees the experience the same way. This is why spiritual growth is less than escaping ordinary life and more about bringing awakened awareness into your ordinary life. Even answering emails become ministry if love is present. Although, let's be honest, some emails still require prayer and deep breathing. Been there, done that. And yet there are times where, and my wife used to make fun of me, Because she'd see I'd read an email and I'd start typing 100 miles an hour. Oh, God, Richard, watch what you're writing, because she knew it was coming from a place of anger. And when I stop now and say, hey, this is where I'm at, or maybe I'll ask for advice on something that I just got that's triggering anger in me, and then turn around and answer from a place of love, a place of heart, I've seen miracles happen and come back. And in those people's lives, I was able to minister into their lives, whether it's technology, whether it's coaching, whether it's that, and they all come back and say, thank you. Imagine if I would have reacted rather than chosen the path. All right, let's go ahead and move on to number 5 here. Your environment shapes consciousness. The movie also highlights the power of community and environment. Isaiah changes when he changes what surrounds him. And that is a real fact, no matter where you're at. People underestimate how much energy influences behavior. Conversations influence thought patterns. Thought patterns, influence choices. Choices influence destiny. Metaphysically, we become resonant of the environment we repeatedly inhabit. I want to read that again. Whether it's metaphysically, scientifically, religiosity, we become resonant when the environments we repeatedly inhabit. I have seen this over and over. I have experienced it over and over. I was a victim of it over and over. Because there was a part of me who was people-pleasing, who tried to fit myself into a situation which I was not. And sometimes I think back and go, what if I had been the real me in those environments? Could I have helped those people find their true selves? And they would have been better if they wanted that. Or in turn, be open enough to say, this is who I am. Teach me. And what could have I gotten from it? And those inhabitants in your lives could be friendships, the media you're watching, again, social media. It could be television media, movies you watch. And again, it is a conscious choice. Anybody who watches me, I'm always watching action films. My movie collection is eclectic because I go from Christian films to inspirational films to martial arts films to violent films, back to I'll watch a rom-com with my wife or my daughter. Horror movies, that's a big one between me and my daughter. It's been a habit we've had for years. And none of that affects me because I go in with the consciousness, this is a movie. This is media. This is not who I want to participate in. Music. What type of music are you listening to? Anybody who listens to my radio stations, I'm listening to club music. I'm listening to high energy salsa. I'm listening to inspirational music. I'm listening to love songs. The Quiet Storm for you guys who are as old as I am. Okay. Relationships. What relationships do you have? I had some great people in my life that I just joined in the pity party. We all blamed everybody. It didn't make them a bad person. It's just who I was. And because I fell into that trap, the habits we make, and even our spiritual practices. I always love when somebody says, if your religion preaches hate, then it's not conducive to living a human life. I say it all the time. My job in Unity is not to tell you what religion to pick, which one's right, which is whatever. My job is to say, here's my experiences. Let's help you through your experiences find your true path. I have seen on every religiosity out there, every group, I've seen the good and the bad. And I hate labeling things because to that person, what they're doing may be good in their mind. But when it comes to my perception, I've seen them on both sides of the spectrum where a person may be a totally different religion from mine, may not even adhere to anything I talk about. I can mention the Bible and they're like, well, that's not my thing. But then they're showing love. And I remember somebody in my life one time, and I really wasn't a church-going person way before I even thought of becoming a minister. who said he's acting more as a Christian than most Christians I know. Because all I knew was love other people, give uncontrollably. And then there was a part of me needed fixing, not so much fixing, but remembering who I was. So the movie itself, when we look at that whole scenario there, is asking us, what are you allowing to forge you? What is the forge that you're plugged into right now making you become? Because no matter what it is, something always is. And you can choose which that is. Let's go ahead and get to number 6 here before we get to the end of our podcast here. Is the real battle is identity. At its core, the forge is about identity. Isaiah's greatest obstacle isn't laziness. It isn't the opportunities he missed. It wasn't even his fear. It was his self-concept. In the movie itself, you see that he was battling the fact that his father left him. And then later on in the movie, he's confronted with his father, even though it was accidental. It was an accidental meeting, I should say. He's confronted with what his friends say he should be. I'm pretty sure social media and everything else was in there. There's a part of him where he reads in there that he must place God first, and in his mind was about giving up addictions. And you see him packing up his video games, his magazines, everything that he's addicted to. And in a Christian sense, he would be putting that as God first. So transformation begins when he stops seeing himself as incapable and begins aligning with possibility. Remember that field of potentiality that I talk about? That's what we're talking about. We're moving from a place of seeing myself as I can't do that to a place of alignment consciously first, because everything starts with a thought, with the potentiality of who I can truly be. That is metaphysical Christianity in motion. As a person thinks in consciousness, experience begins to organize around that belief. As a man thinketh in his heart, so shall he be. And sometimes spirit allows discomfort because the old identity has become too small for the life trying to emerge through us. But we have to move past that discomfort to be able to get to that potentiality. Unity sometimes calls it chemicalization. That moment where you're listening to that small, still voice, you're following that divine spark, you're listening to that knock on the heart that God is saying, hey, I got something better for you. And the ego is sitting there going, no, Rich, we don't do this way. No, we have to do it this way. No. And it becomes almost like a war in our minds. And it becomes what we call chemicalization. It's like the example of putting dirt in the water, mixing it up, and then throwing an Alka-Seltzer in there. What happens? All that dirt rises to the top. So all those fears and everything that the ego thinks is the way we should live is coming up and saying, hey, no, it's not. We need to change this right now. So hopefully you got something from that. So let's go ahead to our homework section. As I always tell people, even when I'm speaking in person or online, I don't ever leave a talk without giving you homework. So here's the homework for this week. I want to ask yourself, what in my life is functioning as a forge right now? So what in my life is functioning as a forge right now? Is it a relationship? Is it grief? Is it discipline? Is it rebuilding? Is it finally taking your purpose seriously? And instead of resisting the fire, ask yourself, what is the experience trying to strengthen within me? Because the forge is not evidence that you are failing. It is evidence that you are becoming. It is the evidence that says you are on that narrow path. You are not walking wide right or wide left. If you remember that from Facing the Giants, you are walking that narrow path and everything around you is trying to pull you off. But you know that by following that narrow path, it is evidence that you are becoming your true self. Take that truth and walk with it. Peace and blessings, and I'll see you next week.
And just like that, the credits start to roll. But here's the truth. What you saw in the movie is already playing out in your life. So the question is, what are you choosing to believe? What role are you stepping into? And what truth are you ready to live? That's the work. If this episode spoke to you, don't just sit with it. Walk with it. Apply it. Live it. Let it move through you. And if you're ready to go deeper, more teachings, tools, journals, and ways to activate this in your everyday life, head over to revrichp.com. That's where the conversation continues. Until next time, keep watching, keep awakening, and take that truth and walk with it. Peace and blessings.